Hey there nation, welcome to the show. We help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander CheapSkate, and today on this edition of Hobby Side, we have another army showcase. This time we'll be showing off the Orc and Goblin army that we use for our Warhammer Fantasy battle reports, and same thing with our Warhammer Age of Sigmar battle reports. So we're going to go dial in on this one, talk about each of the units that we have in each of our armies, where the models came from, and what kind of paint scheme we were kind of going with when we created these miniatures. When we actually created this army put together. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, go ahead and sit back, relax, let's go ahead and talk about each one of these units real quick, and let's go ahead and showcase this army. Let's get this on. Alright, so let's go ahead and start off this little video with talk about the goblins for the portion that we have for this army as well. So as you can see here, we actually have quite a bit of goblin units in this army, and for the careful observer, with the one who's really got really good eyesight, as you can tell, my army is actually made up of various figurines, miniatures, for goblins from various editions of Warhammer Fantasy Battle. I have a combination of 4th edition goblins in here. I also have some, I think, 7th edition goblins that are in this army as well. Same thing with 8th edition as well. And so because of that, the dynamics of the miniatures is kind of really cool looking. It's kind of like a mixture of all kinds of things. And I also have goblins in here that had, were not originally part of Warhammer either. We have like proxy models and things like that we got from other gaming systems. So first of all, let's go and start with this unit over here on the left-hand side. These are our backstabbers, as we like to call them. As you can see here, we got these goblins here. Now, if you can notice, these goblins here in the front rank, this is the command group from the original 7th edition of Warhammer. That was the Battle for Skull Pass, I believe is what it's called there. So I got a mixture of goblins in there armed with bows. And then let me take out this base here. And these goblins here, these ones with the little hoods on with the arrows I mount on this 4x4 base. These guys are actually from the 4th edition of Warhammer Fantasy Battle. In the 4th edition of Warhammer Fantasy Battle, you got an army of goblins as well as an army of high elves, and that's where these guys came from. And for those of you who remember the Battle of Skull Pass edition of Warhammer Fantasy Battle, they had some pretty cool looking Night Goblin sculpts as well, as you can see here. And these guys had, excuse me, an army of goblins as well as an army of dwarves. That's where those guys came from. So that's where these miniatures came from. And then of course for this unit I got 3 fanatics. These guys are from the 8th edition of Warhammer Fantasy Battle with a box set that comes with 3 of them, and that's where I got those guys from. So that's where those miniatures came from. And then over here on the left hand side here, this is my cave squig herd. As you can see, like what's before, we have a combination of old pewter models like this one. This is from the 4th edition of Warhammer Fantasy Battle. So that's where I got some of those. And then these other pewter ones, let me see if I can find them, like this one here. This was from the 7th, I think, edition of Warhammer Fantasy Battle, when they were like still pewter still, but you can still buy lots of cave squigs there. And of course we got some fine cast ones looking in there as well. And then back over here, these squig herders, these ones are kind of like an amalgamation of different types of things as well. Like this right here was the original 4th edition version of a squig herder. You had 2 little night goblins carrying a giant fork, and they would, push the little cave squigs towards you. While this one here, of course, with the bagpipe, that one is from a 7th edition of Warhammer Fantasy Battle. And then you see I also got a Night Goblin Shaman miniature, as well as a couple more just kind of random Night Goblins that I had left over for bits boxes to make up the cave squig herd. Now this guy here is Grom the Paunch. He is a special character from Warhammer. This miniature right here is actually from the 4th edition of Warhammer Fantasy Battle. As you can see, he's got that huge axe elf biter. He's got 3 wolves pulling his chariot. There's Niblet, that's the Night Goblin battle standard bearer that he has as well. I really like this character. I always like the lore associated with that guy, with all the information that was about him, but like how he ate like a plate with the troll meat, raw troll meat, and how he's expanding and he regenerates and stuff. And I thought that was kind of like a cool little fluffy type of story idea from the material from Warhammer. So ever since 4th edition of Warhammer, I've loved this character because him and Eltharion, I believe his name, Eltharion, I forgot the guy's name. He's a high special character, rides a griffin. They were like have better hatred towards each other. And then over here, this huge unit right here is made up of Night Goblins. We call these guys Ludas. As you can see, these guys are a combination of the 4th edition of Night Goblins from the Warhammer edition box that came with High Elves and Night Goblins. You see these got spears there. And what I did is I replaced these guys' shields with Dwarven shields to make it look like these guys had robbed the Cryptos and Dwarves up in the mountains and stole that. And then of course right next to them we have some spearmen from the 7th edition of Warhammer. As you can see, they're from the Battle of Skull Pass. And then right smack dab in the middle of the unit is Skarsnik and Gobla. Skarsnik is the Night Goblin special character, is the original Warlord of the Eight Peaks. This one is the 4th edition miniature. Let me get this out real fast so you guys can see it. And I've always liked this sculpt a lot more than the current sculpt that's available for this miniature. I just thought this one had a lot of character to it, you know, and he just looked really, you know, people might say it looks kind of cartoony, but at the same time, though, I kind of preferred that look for that character because, you know, he's a Goblin Warlord, and so he should look kind of semi-ridiculous, right? And then here we have some addition of some 4th edition of Fanatics. I got 2 of them. This one here was a champion from a box of Night Goblins that I converted into another Fanatic, so that way I would have 3 for this unit. And then finally here in the very far right hand area we have the Sneaky Gits. These are a unit of 20 Night Goblins, just like our Backstabbers that we saw earlier, which are these guys here. They're a combination of 4th edition as well as 7th edition Night Goblins, Bowman. So you can see that we just kind of painted them with a simple kind of like dark red and bright red color scheme. And then of course we got 3 Fanatics for those guys with 8th edition Fantasy Battle Fanatics. And that's going to pretty much make up the front rank for our Goblins. So with that done, we're going to talk about this back rank back here next and talk about exactly where those models came from. Alright, so up next we're going to talk about the back rank of the Goblins. Now we have 2 Cavalry units, which is a unit of Force Goblin Spider Riders. We have our Arachnarok Spider proxy that we have from our army, as well as the unit of Goblin Wolf Riders, and of course we got the Doomdiver Catapults. So let's go and talk about these guys real quick. So for these Doomdiver Catapults, these miniatures might look kind of interesting because these miniatures are actually from the 4th edition of Warhammer Fantasy Battle. The old Doomdiver Catapult consists of 2 miniatures, just a little dude back here who's being flung, and of course like a giant slingshot looking kind of thing. So, you know, it's not as cool looking as the modern one, but at the same time these were a lot cheaper when I bought them back in the day, because back in the day when I bought these back in the 90s, you bought both of these guys in one blister pack, so it was really, really cheap. It cost me about $7. So, you know, it kind of shows you how much Games Workshop prices have skyrocketed as time has gone by. Now, with this Force Goblin Spider Rider unit, this one's a little bit different. As you can see, these guys are all from the 7th edition of Warhammer Fantasy Battle. The Spider Riders that came with the box set, excuse me, came with 10 Spider Riders for the Battle of Skull Pass, and that's where all these guys came from. But this guy here is kind of a little miniature conversion work. This guy was from the 4th edition of Warhammer Fantasy Battle. They're Force Goblin Spider Riders. As you can see, I took some bits and bobs from some Savage Orc miniatures to make his kit look really cool. And the reason why is because I was trying to make this guy look like Snagleg Grobspit, who's the Force Goblin special character. And to kind of make him stand out, I took the little totem that was available in the Battle for Skull Pass kit and made it look like this was like his little totem area, and he kind of climbed it to the top of that as well. So with this miniature, as combined with the other 10, makes it a full unit of 12. Is how I counted out for my army as well. So very, very cool little miniature there as well. Wanted to paint them in bright colors. I got lots of blues and oranges for their feathers. I wanted their spiders to be bright yellow so that way they kind of stuck out, because, you know, they're forest creatures and they're supposed to look really, you know, colorful and gaudy looking. Now moving on to our Arachnarok Spider. Let me move these Doomdivers out of the way real quick. Alright, so this is our Arachnarok Spider that we use for my army as well. Alright, now this is actually in 2 different kits. Let me take this one on the top off. So this miniature here is actually from Reaper Mini, is what it's called. As you can see there, it's just like a giant spider is what it is. It's made out of printing resin, and it's from the Bones line of miniatures that Reaper Miniatures offers. And this spider I got for about $8 at my local gaming store, and it's a pretty big model. So because I used that instead of buying that huge Arachnarok kit that's like super expensive, and then what I decided to do was take this Howdah and just replace it with shields and stuff on the outside of it, and quivers from some Savage Orc kits that I had, and I glued to the base of a movement tray. So you can see there's just a little base that I just kind of put these guys on, and then I painted up like 1 Forest Goblin Shaman from the 4th edition of Warhammer, and then some Night Goblin miniatures, and just paint up turquoise and yellow to make them look bright and make them stand out. And that's how I created the Howdah for it. And so as you can see, you just place it right on top of it. Let me see if I can get in there really quick. Let's lock it in real quick. There we go. It's locked into place. And so yeah, now you have a very successful Arachnarok Spider that you can use for your battle reports. A very, very cheap and effective way of making one. So that's why I love this miniature right there. And then finally over here I got my Goblin Wolf Riders. Now these guys are actually not from Warhammer at all. These guys are actually from an old board game that Games Workshop worked with Milton Bradley called Battle Master. Let me get one of these guys real quick. So as you can see, it's just a real simple looking plastic sculpt for a wolf, and they had like a real simple little goblin rider. I jazzed mine up a little bit though. I chopped off the left arm of these miniatures. They used to have like a little spear looking thing, but looked kind of weedy. So because of that, I chopped that off their arms and then replaced them with night goblin arms. So that way I had various hand weapons and stuff. And so that's where these guys come from. They're all from the Battle Masters kits. Now I only had 11 wolves because I had 2 kits of Battle Master, and one of them got damaged real quick. And this wolf here is actually supposed to be the Catilla the Hunter from the 8th edition of Warhammer Fantasy Battle. He rides a big great wolf called Old, I believe her name is, and I managed to get a spare warg miniature from the Lord of the Rings from miniatures game that Games Workshop made. I think I got this guy for like 50 cents from some bit box, and then I took the rider and just gave him like the crescent moon blade to make him look a little bit different, just, you know, glued him right on top, and that's how I made that guy as well. So yeah, very, very happy the way that these guys came out from my Goblin Cavalry, as well as the Ragnarok Spider. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to move on to the Orcs real quick and talk about exactly how I went about paying those guys. Let's make it happen. Alright, and now we're back, and with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk about the last bit of my Orc and Goblin army for our studio, and that's where we talk about the Orcs and what we use for these guys as well. As you can see there, we have like 3 major units really. I will admit that my army is very goblin heavy, and the reason why my army is very goblin heavy is because I managed to get some Savage Orcs. I got like a bunch of those miniatures on the cheap. The problem is I just haven't painted them up yet because I've been busy doing other painting projects, trying to get my other armies done real quick. I have kind of an idea to make those Savage Orcs look really cool and just get them painted up really quick like. But for now, though, as you can see, I have 2 movement trays just put together so that way they're in units of 20. So see, there's like 20 guys there, 20 orcs there, 20 orcs there, and then another 20 orcs over there, for a grand total of 80 orcs. And as you can see, they're also a combination of stuff. These are like my normal orcs, while these guys over here in the red, these guys are my black orcs, and then of course back there I got my giant. So we're going to talk about what these guys look like. So starting off with this unit of orcs real quick, this is actually a combination of several editions of Warhammer. This miniature here is one edition, this miniature, and this miniature. I got multiple copies of these guys in plastic. These 2 miniatures right here, the archer as well as the orc with the sword, the scimitar, these guys are from like the 4th edition of Warhammer, the plastic kits that you were able to buy back in the day. Excuse me, same thing with this pewter orc back here. This is an orc shaman. He's supposed to be like a savage orc shaman. He's from like the 4th edition of Warhammer as well, and this is like the pewter model, and that's where I got most of these guys from. So you can see in the unit I have several archers as well as guys armed with scimitars. Now this guy here, this orc mounted on a boar, this is from the War Boss kit for the 8th edition of Warhammer Fantasy Battle, where you can get one guy on foot and one guy on a boar. And I just kind of paint out to make him look like a battle standard bearer, so that way he's worth 2 orc units when you stack them together in the unit. And that's where he comes from. Now, majority of my miniatures for both units come from 2 places. Sorry, come from 1 place. And that 1 place is this guy right here. So about 20, I believe, I think I have 20 or maybe 30 of my orcs in these units are actually made from this type of miniature. Now this miniature here of this orc is from that Battle Master board game I was talking about earlier. And in that unit you had an army of goblins as well as like units of orcs as well. So 20 of those orcs from this unit are actually made up of this particular model as well. And now I know they all may look the same, you know, they all may look kind of similar, but if you look at it from a distance, you really can't tell that they're all the same miniature, you know. And then if you just gotta paint them up differently and just use different paint schemes for their shields and stuff, you know, it kind of tricks the eye to thinking they're different miniatures. I also got an 8th edition battle standard bearer orc over here, and then I've got like I think a 6th edition Warhammer orc on a boar as well. So my model collection is just like piecemeal together from just things I was able to get for the cheap at the time that I got them at. So yeah, that pretty much makes up my army for my orcs, for my normal orcs. Let me put this guy back real quick. Alright, so that unit out of the way, let's go and talk about my black orcs real quick. So these guys are once again these guys are kind of a nightmare. Alright, not because they're hard to paint or anything like that, or hard to assemble. They're very easy to assemble. The reason why they're a nightmare is because ranking these guys up is like almost impossible to do. This is the most difficult unit of Warhammer miniatures to rank up in these rank and file system than, you know, than anything else. Now this one is actually a combination of different types of miniatures. So the most common type that's in here are these 8th edition Black Orc kits, because these things were amazing looking. They're absolutely beautiful. They had thick armor plate, you know, lots of huge weapons and different types of weapons and stuff like that. I also got kits of normal orcs. So this is the edition of normal orcs that you got from 8th edition. I just replaced their heads with Black Orc heads and just kind of gave them the same kind of paint scheme to give them the Canvas County unit. I also have Grimgor Ironhide, the actual character model from the 8th edition. This guy's a fine cast miniature, so I was really happy the way he kind of came out as well. And then of course I also have some old school 4th edition Black Orcs as well. So you can see the 4th edition of Black Orcs, they just look like bigger orcs, and when you kind of put them together with the 8th edition, you know, they look vastly different from one another. But that's pretty much where I got the idea to paint these guys up. I just, you know, I put them together to make this huge unit of 40 orcs, Black Orcs, so I did. Now, if you're wondering where I got the idea from the color scheme from, there's actually a YouTuber, his name is Bloody Beast. He does an amazing job on his miniatures. That guy has like a wonderful, highly talented artist. Now, mine are a pale comparison to what he created, because, you know, mine's a little bit more simple than his. But anyways, he has a unit of Black Orcs he called the Crimson Killers that he had on his webpage, on his blog, as well as his YouTube channel. So, you know, check it out. And I just love that color scheme that he came up with, reds and black and white and green for the flesh and stuff. And I thought that just looked really, really cool. So I decided to try to, you know, emulate that paint style and just kind of copy it for myself, because he did a really good job. And that's where my miniatures came from on that part, for that Kate scheme. So yeah, very, very happy the way that the Black Orcs came out. They look, you know, right deadly. That's what they look like. I got different shades of dark red and bright red and everything in between to make them look all mismatched like that. So this is supposed to be the Crimson Killers. These are basically supposed to be the Immortals, which are the bodyguard unit for Grimgor Ironhide. And the very last miniature we're going to talk about real quick is Undead Fred and the Loon. So this is my giant for my army. Now, if you're wondering why I have a giant skeleton giant, it's because for one reason and one reason only. And that's because this model is super cheap. And that's the reason why I bought it. The original like Games Workshop giant, I think, is like 60 bucks maybe, or 56 bucks. I'm not sure how much it costs, but it costs way more than this miniature. This miniature is actually, if you look at his arm here, we can just bend it real quick, is actually printer resin. As you can see, he's from the Reaper Minis line of bone miniatures. And it is called a Skeletal Colossus is what it's called. So either way, it looks really cool. You know, it looks like it's built together, ramshackled together with bits and bobs of different heads and things. And that's why I went with this miniature, because it was super cheap and it was about the scale of a giant. And to make it look more orc and goblin-y, what I decided to do is I took a spare night goblin that I had and I created this character. This is the Loon. The idea is supposed to be that this guy took the head off of a high elf mage. So if you look real close, see there's a high elf princess's head that the Loon is carrying. And the idea is supposed to be that this high elf mage was full of magic and stuff, and that he killed the guy and took his head as a trophy, and he found out that the magic from the head made this whole skeletal thing come to life, and that became the giant. And so there's a little goblin, the Loon, he's running on top. I'm like, yeah, because, you know, that looks kind of cool. So I just like that idea of putting that together and, you know, creating this Colossus monster that is Undead Fred the Loon. Yeah, it's cheap and it's cheesy for me to use that cheap model to do it, but you know what? I'm Commander CheapSkate. I mean, if you're watching my channel with that kind of a screen name, what do you think I was going to do when it came to purchasing my miniatures? So yeah, that's pretty much my Orc and Goblin army that we just kind of talked about. I do have a unit of some Savage Orcs. I want to get that painted up to make it look really cool, because I think it'd be kind of neat to kind of complete that look for this army. I don't have any real cavalry units really, like with boar riders or anything like that, because I never really had much luck with those kind of units before, so I figured I'm not going to get those from my army. But yeah, that's pretty much my Orcs and Goblin army. It's a very, very kind of cool color scheme. If I had to say anything else about it, I guess I would just say the bases. If you're wondering why I got this like bright orange base from, it was from Mad Max Fury Road. I got inspired by that movie when that movie came out. I just like the bright orange wasteland color that they had throughout that film, so I tried to do exactly the same thing and create that scheme with my Orcs and Goblin army. I want to make it look like they came out of the Badlands, because that's where orcs are supposed to come from. They're supposed to come from the Badlands, from the other side of the World's Edge Mountains. And I just like that orange. I thought it really popped, and so I just like this idea that these guys are coming out of the deserts to, you know, wreak and rave and to, you know, destroy stuff. All right, well, that's going to do for this one, you guys. As always, please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. Your guys' input is always appreciated. Also, check us out on Google+, Facebook, Instagram, and now Blogger. Blogger.com. We have a blog now, so that way we can tell you exactly what we're doing for all of our latest and the greatest in the hobby tips. In fact, on Blogger.com, I have actually a copy of my Necromunda gang rosters available for you to download for spreadsheets, Excel spreadsheets. If you want to use that for your own gangs to keep track of it, that's perfectly fine. All right, you guys, that's good for this one. As always, you guys, we'll see you on the next one. You stay classy. Peace out.